Summer can be a bit of a slog. For us, it's often for some reason a rather busy time, and I'm sure we're not alone.
Well, you can beat the summertime sadness and the August angst and enhance your everyday with our excellent sponsor, Via Hemp. This is a company that crafts award-winning premium THC and THC-free gummies.
Each of these gummies is especially designed to cultivate a specific mood. Whether you're looking to get relaxed, get quality sleep, get creative, or just to get focused. If you're 21 or older, you can experience it for yourself and get 15% off your first order with our exclusive code MSheet at viahemp.com. That's VIIAHEMP.com.
I personally enjoyed their grapefruit flow state gummies. This CBG and CBD powerhouse really helped me tap into my productivity. Like, we have had an extremely busy summer, and I feel flow state got me over the finish line a few times when I was editing multiple episodes a day, digging through documents, and knocking out a bunch of interviews.
Via Hemp does not require a medical card, and it ships legally to all 50 states. It's also affordable, and even more so for Murder Sheet listeners who get a special deal.
If you're 21 and older, head to viahemp.com and use code MSheet to receive 15% off. That's VIIAHEMP.com and use code MSheet at checkout. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Enhance your everyday with Via.
Temp check. What kind of summer are we having this year? A family road trip summer? A beach bum summer? Or a wake me up when the sun sets summer? With Instacart, choose your own adventure and skip the shopping side quests. Where available, you can get ice cream delivered to your hotel, sunscreen to the pool, or cold brew to your bed. Well, door, in as fast as 30 minutes. Wherever you find yourself this summer, you can get the goods. Download Instacart for free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Excludes restaurants. Additional terms and fees apply.
This episode is sponsored by AutoTrader. Credit scores, down payments, interest rates. Car buying can be a numbers game, but you don't have to be a math expert to get the keys to your dream car. Just use Kelley Blue Book My Wallet on AutoTrader. Crunch your numbers and get your personalized results so you know exactly how much you'll pay each month for your car. It's like having a magic wand for your wallet. Presto, the car you've been wanting is now within reach. So hit the road and leave your calculator at home. Find your next car on autotrader.com.
Content warning, this episode contains discussion of murder and violence, including the murder of a child. So today on the cheat sheet, Kevin was responsible for compiling all the various cases, and he brought up some pretty interesting ones from around the country. One we've covered before, but the other 3 we have not covered yet. And these cases are from Texas, Colorado, an interstate case, and Missouri. So we're going to be going all around and digging into some of these cases that have gotten some media attention lately. My name is Anya Kane. I'm a journalist.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee. I'm an attorney.
And this is The Murder Sheet.
We're a true crime podcast focused on original reporting, interviews, and deep dives into murder cases.
We're The Murder Sheet.
And this is the cheat sheet, Convicts and Conflicts.
So the first case you brought up for us took place in Texas and is just an awful and tragic situation.
Yes, this is the case involving a young girl, an 11-year-old girl named Audrii Cunningham. Last Thursday, back on February 15th, she did not show up for school. And That naturally caused alarm bells to ring for her family. They reported her missing. And one thing that jumped out to a lot of people is that there was a person living on the family's property named Don Stephen McDougal. And he was a 42-year-old man. And he was someone who often went with Audrii to the bus stop to ensure, I suppose, that she made it to school safely. And one thing about McDougal that's interesting is that he has a bit of a history.
He has a criminal history, including a child enticement charge. I suppose it's possible that the family did not know that.
Can you also tell us about some of the other charges he has in his background?
Yeah, it's not just the child enticement, which again stands out to me because he's interacting with an 11-year-old girl frequently. And that was from 2007 in Brazoria County in Texas. And he pled no contest. So I just want to, he had 2 years in prison, but ended up getting a lot of credit the time he already spent in jail. So in 2010, as well as 2019, he was also hit with 2 charges of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. And his some of the people who were victimized by him actually came forward to the media speaking to CNN. One former coworker said that after some conflict, he ended up coming back to his house with a knife and was like stabbing his door. So he has a history of violence. He has a history of disturbing behavior with children.
And as I say, this man's record sort of made people look at him almost immediately. And in fact, McDougal began making public proclamations of his innocence. And again, this comes from CNN. It indicates that McDougal was going on Facebook on a page called True Crime Society, indicating he wasn't guilty. He's saying he wasn't running or hiding. He cooperated with authorities, and he even pointed out that he actually went door to door to help conduct a search for Audrii. And what's interesting about that is Sheriff Byron Lyons, he did not necessarily see that to be an act born out of sincerity. Lyons told CNN, "It simply tells me that McDougal's trying to give the appearance that he's not at fault in her disappearance." So pretty quickly, authorities discovered her backpack, Audrii's backpack. It was rather disturbingly found near a dam on a lake. The family's home happens to be located not far from a place called Lake Livingston. If you're not familiar with this, and I certainly was not, Lake Livingston is a reservoir which actually has 83,000 surface acres. So then they actually needed to slow the flow of water from the reservoir to allow the river level to recede low enough to help them conduct a search of the river. And when they did, they found Audrii's body.
Yeah, this is so horrifying. I also underscores with this McDougal guy. I mean, I'll be curious to see what ultimate, like the PCA and the evidence is against him, but it's certainly understandable why they're looking at somebody with his record and why they've arrested him. It seems like one thing that I always think of is whenever you have somebody going like protesting their innocence so, strenuously, to me that doesn't really matter either way. It's like some people just do that, even when a lot of evidence is against them. That's not, people often like tout that as like, wow, like, there you go. But like people just lie sometimes. Criminals lie sometimes. That's never a factor for me in whether I believe someone is innocent or guilty. Also, innocent people wrongfully confess. So, the strenuousness of denial or whatever, I never understand why that is even considered something notable by people who are commenting on a case. That's just me, at least.
So as Anya indicated, McDougal has been charged with capital murder. So this is something we're definitely going to keep an eye on. It's a very tragic story, and our heart goes out to the family of young Audrii Cunningham as they are dealing with an unimaginable loss at this time. Our next story begins in New York. Some of the sources we used for this were Fox 5 and NBC4. This story actually begins a few weeks back, on February 8th, when a woman named Denisse Oleas-Arancibia was discovered murdered in a hotel in the Soho part of New York. She was actually found murdered at a hotel called Soho 54. And when she was found, she was discovered by a housekeeper employed at that hotel. And this poor woman had plastic fragments embedded in her head, which certainly tells us something about the very violent and horrible way in which she was murdered. The crime scene was so bloody, the manner of her death so violent, that the suspect in the case actually left the hotel wearing her leggings, again, the presumption being because his own pants were so bloodied in the attack. Now, it is believed that the person responsible for this crime is a man named Raad Almansoori. Can you tell us what he did after he allegedly fled Soho?
So, unfortunately, his spate of crimes continued, according to police. He hopped on a flight from JFK Airport to Arizona. Then he stole a car at knife point and subsequently forced a woman into a McDonald's restaurant and proceeded to stab her multiple times. From the media reports, it appears that she survived this horrible attack. And he also has a history of just violence against women. In 2023, he abducted and sexually assaulted a woman in Florida. And unfortunately, after doing this, he posted bail and then fled. Obviously, if he had not been allowed to post bail, then his later victims would most likely be alive and unaffected by him. And he also has a warrant out of Texas. So this guy is prolific and moving state to state, harming women.
He has a long history of this behavior. And one thing that is interesting is once he was in custody for the McDonald's attack, he admitted to it, and then he started telling police that they should Google the Soho 54 hotel, which again is the location where that woman was murdered. And police were able to use credit card records to establish that Mr. Almansoori was indeed in New York at the time of that murder.
Yeah, this is a scary case of basically a serial predator going from state to state, victimizing people seemingly with impunity until now. Yeah, so I guess we'll see how that case develops, and if unfortunately even other further cases are linked to this person.
Yeah, it's always especially upsetting to me when one of these violent offenders gets into the system and then is released again and does more harm.
Yes, hindsight is absolutely 20/20, and there's been worthwhile efforts to reform the bail system, especially for nonviolent offenders. But it is very troubling to see that if somebody had been denied bail, then other horrible things would not have happened. And I think those cases need to be scrutinized, because perhaps some violent accusations, should carry more weight, and perhaps bail or post-release monitoring systems should be modified accordingly, because there was an opportunity seemingly from what we're reading in the media reports to stop this rampage, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, this is a man that should not have been out on the streets. Let's move to Colorado, where the Denver Gazette has been all over this story. This is a story that began last Friday, February 16th, when police early in the morning around 6 a.m. got a call indicating that shots had been fired at a dormitory on the campus of the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs. When police show up to investigate, they quickly ascertain which room the shots came from, and when they go inside, they find two deceased people, Celie Rain Montgomery and Samuel Knopp. Mr. Knopp was a student at the university. Miss Montgomery was not a student there. Pretty early on, law enforcement officials began making statements that this double murder was, quote, an isolated incident between parties that were known to one another, and that there was no immediate threat to the community. And in fact, within days, they made an arrest in this case. Can you tell us who they arrested and what his connection was to these people?
Certainly. So the man police arrested in this case was 25-year-old Nicholas Jordan, a young man from Detroit. And he's been arrested on suspicion of 2 counts of first-degree murder. So Jordan and Knopp were roommates. We don't know anything else about their relationship, whether or not there was bad blood there, whether or not they got along. It's really not clear at this time, but we do know that they were living together in this student housing situation. We don't really quite know how Montgomery ties into that, whether she was in a relationship with one of the men, or if she was a friend, or why she was there.
So this isn't a situation like we see in Idaho, where Kohlberger is alleged to enter a residence where he doesn't necessarily know anybody and certainly doesn't live there. This case, what's alleged to have happened is the suspect actually lived where the murders occurred.
Absolutely. Well, it sort of ties into the case in Texas involving Audrii Cunningham, because oftentimes, as you know, especially when people get into true crime, it's drilled into us like, don't trust strangers, don't trust strangers. And maybe in certain circumstances, that's a fair mantra. Maybe in other circumstances, that's a little bit paranoid and kind of encourages antisocial behavior in and of itself. But oftentimes the people who are going to be the most dangerous to us are the people in our lives in some capacity. They have access to us. They have possibilities of building up some sort of motive to harm us. Those are the people who unfortunately are typically going to be murdering us. So it's not to be, the answer is not to be paranoid about everybody in your life. The answer is to be aware of that fact and perhaps looking out for red flags around, those who have access to you, either because of a living situation or their family or they're in your friend group. It's important to be scrutinizing those relationships and ensuring that things are in fact safe and good and calm.
And I should note that the suspect is being held on bail of $5 million. Police indicate that he seemed to have been planning to flee the state before his arrest. And furthermore, there was a firearm in his vehicle at the time of his arrest. So this, again, is something that's going to be very interesting to keep our eyes on and to try to determine what exactly happened and are there any lessons we can draw from it to help protect other people. And meanwhile, we obviously mourn the loss of these 2 very young people who were at the beginning of their lives and certainly did not deserve this awful thing to happen to them.
It's absolutely tragic. And speaking of awful tragedies, the last case we'll talk about today is a case that we have actually covered on the show before. This, of course, is the Kansas City Super.
Okay, it's time to commit. 2024 is the year for prioritizing yourself. Begin your new smile journey with Byte, and you could start seeing results in just 2 to 3 weeks. Just order your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95 at Byte.com. Byte Clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces. Plus, they offer financing options, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
What makes a life a good one? Is it the adventure you have? Or the friends you find along the way? Maybe it's pursuing your passion while striving to protect, defend, and save what you believe in every single day. So what makes a life a good one? In the Coast Guard, we think it's all of the above and more. But you'll have to find out for yourself. Visit gocoastguard.com to learn more.
Parade shooting.
And I should note before we get into it that our source for this update is a story in the New York Times by Julie Bosman and Kevin Draper.
So this case has attracted a lot of national attention, and I think that's understandable. You have people enjoying themselves in a parade to celebrate their city's Super Bowl success. What's more American and fun than that? I mean, you just go out with the family and have a good time. But unfortunately, like so many things that should just be a fun day for people, this ended in a hail of gunfire, and one woman was left dead. A local DJ named Elizabeth Galvan. She was 43. She was, beloved by her friends and family.
And she wasn't doing anything wrong. She just went there to celebrate her team's success.
Yeah. I mean, she should have been allowed to do that and go home. There's no reason that this woman should be dead.
And since this awful incident happened, we've all been wondering what happened. Why did this shooting occur? What caused it?
It's interesting with mass shootings. There's been, understandably, because there's been so many, but there's been sort of like a framework that we think about them. There's like the lone gunman who shows up to kill as many people as possible and do harm, and, sort of like a Sandy Hook, an Aurora, Colorado situation, coming there with a purpose to murder and kill. Part of what makes this situation almost like hard to grapple with for me is like just the banality of it. You have, in this situation, what became clear early on was that this was not your typical mass shooting as far as the public conceptualizes this. This was a personal dispute. Although, frankly, looking at the details, I don't even know how personal it is. This was a dispute between armed people who then decided to open fire in a parade grounds, like with plenty of people all around. I use the word stupid with all force and disgust. Like it's not stupid in that it didn't have a massive effect. It's just like the stupidest possible
What
thing.
was the reason? What caused it?
Because one person was looking at another person. That's been stated as the reason that people started shooting at each other. It reminds me a bit, like, I remember in like studying history, like there was all this stuff in American history. There was a lot of research done and kind of investigation into codes of honor. And a lot of it was very superficial. It wasn't like, oh, how am I being honorable in my behavior? It was like, if you offend me, then we need to duel. It was just like nonsense. It was like stupid, insecure people trying to fight each other in order to like have some semblance of self-worth. And, it's always like weird to read about that in history. And you're like, wow, this is so stupid. These guys are just, being ridiculous. But how far have we really come if people are shooting at each other because they looked at each other and there was offense taken? And how horrifying to live in a society where you could just be standing around minding your own business like Miss Galvan was and be killed because the people around you are just that stupid.
And their stupidity is going to have tremendous impact, not just on the people they shot, but on their own lives, because they could actually face life in prison for this.
Good. They should. I mean, so this is the two people who have been arrested and charged in this case are Lindell Mays, who's 23, and Dominic Miller, who is 18. Mays even admitted to police that this whole thing was stupid. he acknowledges just how meaningless this violence was. Miller is the one, though, whose gun fired the bullet that killed Elizabeth Galvan. But in total, let's be clear, there were 24 people who were injured by this, including many children.
And it's not clear if these were the only 2 men firing weapons or if other people got involved.
We know that a number of juveniles were detained in this case. And for a time, I actually thought maybe the shooters were juveniles. But the 2 men that we're talking about today are legally adults.
Yeah, one of them is 18.
Yeah, but that's in the United States, that is legally an adult. They've not named any of the juveniles because obviously, family court and privacy concerns, sometimes juveniles do not get named unless they are charged as adults.
And I should mention that Miss Galvan's family issued a statement thanking law enforcement and prosecutors for making the investigation into her murder such a high priority.
Yes, there's just, it just makes me sick. Like this, if these men and this group if these men had been able to just regulate their emotions and just deal with another person staring at them and moving on, she would still be alive and all these children would not be in the hospital. It's just remarkable. It's just it's hard to it's just wild because I think I've come to be able to wrap my head around the fact that some people are so disturbed that they will take a gun and go somewhere and try to kill people. I can deal with that, but just something that's just something that should not have led to violence that has killed a woman. I don't know. It's just I have a hard time with that.
Yeah, it's shocking.
So yeah, I guess ultimately this episode was sort of about the dangers posed by strangers doing awful things and the dangers posed by people in your life who might be doing equally awful things. And I think the answer, though, I see sometimes people online with true crime, they'll almost, you see some of these groups, they almost become paranoid or start saying oh, this man was trying to kidnap me because he looked at me weird in a Home Depot. And it's I don't think the answer is to become paranoid. I think the answer is to just be aware and just be always assessing, are your relationships, are there any red flags anywhere? Are there any red flags in the people that you've let in your life and your family's life? As well as in a situation, like Kansas City, that unfortunately we can't really control because you can't read the minds of the people around you and realize, oh, this guy is the type of person to just start shooting because somebody looked at him weird. So I tend to like to focus on what we can control, but it's difficult that the latter is so out of our control. And I think it makes a lot of people feel, understandably, including myself, very helpless.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncontrollable chaos in this world. And with that, I guess, happy weekend.
Oh, geez. Yeah, sorry to end on a downer note, but it's just, that is unfortunately the society we live in. Sometimes it feels like we're in Hollywood's version of the Wild Wild West again. People are shooting each other out at high noon and, we're all just the townspeople trying to, live our lives and hide in the saloon.
And with that, thank you so much for listening to this week's Cheat Sheet. Thanks so much for listening to the Murder Sheet. If you have a tip concerning one of the cases we cover, please email us at murdersheet@gmail.com. If you have actionable information about an unsolved crime, please report it to the appropriate authorities.
If you're interested in joining our Patreon, that's available at www.patreon.com/murdersheet. If you want to tip us a bit of money for records requests, you can do so at www.buymeacoffee.com/murdersheet. We very much appreciate any support.
Special thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for the Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
If you're looking to talk with other listeners about a case we've covered, you can join the Murder Sheet discussion group on Facebook. We mostly focus our time on research and reporting, so we're not on social media much. We do try to check our email account, but we ask for patience as we often receive a lot of messages. Thanks again for listening.